Hello and welcome to the Move Your Business Forward podcast. These talks are hosted by Rob Bowl, founder of Evoke Management and CEO of International Leaders UK. He'll be talking with experts from both these companies about issues that affect SME companies today.
Welcome to this episode of the Move Your Business Forward podcast. I'm joined here by colleague Stuart George. Stuart is a part-time fractional commercial director, but he has been in his career an FD, an MD, a CEO, pretty much everything, and is now looking to work with more and more SME companies on a fractional basis, helping them with business growth and helping them move their business forward. Today, we're going to talk about a particular area, or three areas: purpose, people, and profit, which is something that comes up regularly. Stuart, it's great to have you here. Let's jump straight in.
Okay.
Purpose,
Thank you very much, Rob.
Purpose, people, profit is something that comes up a lot at the moment, and we see people talking about it. Why do you think it's these three areas together are coming up and people are talking about it?
I think, why are they coming up together? Yeah, so they are linked without question. We're all dependent upon each other. We're dependent upon the world around us. We're dependent upon the planet. And therefore, this interdependency and the fact that we're all being affected by things that happen within the world is becoming more prominent to us. And I think business has a really important part to play, because I think business can be, and in many ways has been, an absolutely brilliant positive force for change and a force for good. But it's really important that that is what happens, because at the same time, there's inevitably things that don't go according to plan, or that are detrimental to people and the planet, society at large. And that's what needs to be guarded against. And I believe that purpose can be a focus that allows people to make sure that they're on the right side of that, good or bad, which is obviously very subjective and opinionated. But at the same time, it helps people direct their energies into good things that have greater good, which is to say that they're for society at large, rather than just quite narrowly for profit, for argument's sake. I think if there's a hierarchy to purpose, people, and profit, you would think that profit should be the outcome of good behavior within a business. And where a business is doing good things and serving society at large and looking after the interests of a greater group of stakeholders, they would benefit by being a more successful business. And one measure of that success might well be profit.
No, 100%. I think listening to you talk, and something that doesn't come up all the time, but I hear this from particular organizations where there almost seems to be a bit of embarrassment about making a profit. It's almost like, we've got to be careful what we're doing here, because in some areas profit seems like a bad thing. And I think the message here is you can do all of these things, right? You can have a really clear, defined purpose that is a good thing for what you're trying to solve as a problem with your business offering, your product, your services, delivering a great service and having happy customers, and you're doing that in a way that doesn't have a negative impact on the planet and is sustainable and all this kind of stuff, as well as having a great team of people that are all kind of following this purpose, behind the purpose, engaged with it and enjoying what they do, having good work-life balance, work environment, all that kind of stuff, and make a ton of money at the same time. I can't see why it's a choice. It should be something that we can do all those things. Do you see all these things being possible, or do you think there's a little bit of we can only have a strong purpose if we treat people in a different way, or if we maybe give up a bit of that ability to make a profit? Or do you think it can all be done?
It can definitely all be done. I think there are lots of examples today, and we might talk about those in a moment. But purpose is something that is really supportive of a business in this day and age, because it attracts customers. And the lack of purpose, or any reason why people don't know why a business exists, is a cause for concern among customers potentially at this time. and therefore a detractor, creates distrust perhaps. And trust is such an important thing in our world, in every relationship that we have, both from a personal point of view, in all of our individual relationships, and from a business perspective as well. Businesses need trust. Of course, we generally call it reputation in that world.
Yeah.
But that reputation is so important for a business, and it stems from the trust that their customers and their employees have. And so it's a virtuous circle, really. If you've got purpose, which can inspire the people within an organization, then that means that they're going to serve the organization and serve their customers to a better standard, which is going to in itself attract more customers. Those customers are going to feel comfortable with the purpose of the organization too. They'll talk about it. Again, that's all positive publicity. Not only is it loyalty from the existing group of customers, but it's word of mouth and spreading the word, referencing that business as being a good business. Again, if that's something that will inspire and motivate the employees, all of it goes round, which creates a more successful business. So the purpose is something to create engagement specifically with the employees, but also with the customers. And when those good things happen, it leads to a more successful business, which inevitably would then be attractive to investors and other interests. So they're absolutely inclusive, mutually inclusive.
And as you say, they all drive the same thing, right? If you have a very engaged team that are commercially minded, understand the drivers of good business, from generating customers and retaining customers, delivering a good product, doing it profitably and not having a drain on cash and hitting profit margin. All of that, if you educate your team, I think works. And as you say, having a strong purpose and reason for why you're doing business and the way you do business is a great hook to attract the kind of people you want to be working with, right? The kind of customers that you think are a good fit, you can build strong relationships with, and have long-term arrangement, whether that's B2B or B2C, right? Because you're that purpose, that brand, that ethos, that where you're going next is what's going to intrigue those customers to stay around and be part of what you do.
100%.
Yeah.
It's absolutely about that. And you mentioned another word, which I think is tremendously important in all of this, and that's long-term.
Yeah.
So the thinking as a consequence of being more purpose-led, purpose-driven, however you want to describe it, is that you tend to be looking much further into the future. Your horizon is therefore guided by this sense of purpose. The purpose is a North Star and gives guidance to all of the decisions that you make within a business. And of course, you're inevitably going to have to balance short-term decision-making with long-term decision-making. But it's likely that you're going to take in that long-term view in a way that you don't always if you're not so purpose-focused. Because maybe in that thinking, in short-term thinking, the financial imperative becomes the number one driver.
Yeah.
And sometimes that financial imperative might be a correct decision from a short-term point of view, but for the longer-term interests of the business, it doesn't necessarily represent the right decision. And so purpose gives you that methodology of determining what we should really be doing for the long-term interests of the business and all of the people who care about the business. So it's absolutely something that I think can be enormously useful. And this idea of purpose, it stems from a bigger thought process, really. It's more about integrated thinking and systems thinking and all that kind of thing. It's bringing the big picture into view rather than narrowly focusing on a decision that's very much short term, as I described a minute ago.
No, 100%. And I think all those decisions, if they're aligned with a longer term purpose and with that, the goals and aims that come with that, you can make strong, correct decisions now that are all going to play in that same direction. I guess linking purpose to setting goals and actually having something tangible, I think a lot of businesses struggle with, and often you see some pretty ambitious kind of headlines around our purpose is this or our mission is this.
Yes.
Suddenly you think, well, that's not at all tangible. How do you actually get buy-in? And because at the end of the day, you've got to have a scorecard of some kind as to make sure you're going in that direction. At the same time, you've got to have people with their own individual parts to play in that wider, longer term thing, and make sure you're tracking the right amount of profit margin and profit at the same time. So linking purpose to goal setting, any particular thoughts or tips as to how to make that work well?
Yeah, I think that, as I described earlier, purpose represents the North Star. And then within that, you might have other goals and objectives that the business has that have to fit underneath that overall objective, but then can be at a different time frame, perhaps. So you might have an annual target, you might have a 5-year target. You've certainly got a place where you want to get to within the business. So long as those can fit within this sense of purpose that you've got, the purpose being, for argument's sake, that you want to. So one of the ones that I like at the moment is a business called Who Gives a Crap. So what that business is looking to do is it makes toilet roll. So it does environmentally friendly toilet roll. But what they're trying to do is provide sanitation for the whole world and improve sanitation for the whole world. They donate 50% of their profits. And again, not all of this is necessary, but I think it's quite interesting in the sense that their bigger sense of purpose is to provide sanitation. So obviously we can recognize that that's in the good of the planet. We can also recognize that that's in the good of the people and a broader society. They're looking at this from a global perspective. I think they're an Australian business originally. They're also over here in the UK. But then within that, they provide a product, which is a great product, and a service to customers, which is also of great value. But their goals, and I don't know what the specific goals are and objectives that they have within the business, but they will be aligned with that North Star. And they might be that we're going to grow to £25 million turnover, to £250 million turnover, or whatever it might be. But that goal can be set within the parameters of creating a better world.
No, so I think that's a great example. I've come across the brand, and I've seen some of the messaging, which I think is really good. Have you got other examples that spring to mind? That's obviously one. Anything else that?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's quite a few businesses that are purpose orientated these days. So Tony's Chocolonely is one that you might have seen in the shops recently. Yep. They're looking to eliminate, have completely slave-free chocolate, and make that their mission. Patagonia is another famous one, of course. They're trying to help fight the climate crisis. Who else was I thinking of? Body Shop is, of course, a really good example from many years ago. They're still going, and it's all about cruelty-free beauty products. So there's many. I mean, probably the most successful example might be Tesla, actually, because obviously their thing is about sustainable energy. So trying to move the world to a more sustainable transport network and such like, and with their electric cars. So there are many examples, and these businesses are obviously successful. They're successful because, I would say, of their purpose and what's driving them to create a good business, a business that appeals to people and can therefore be profitable as a consequence of all of that.
Yeah, I think also you mentioned chocolate brand there. I believe this is correct because I've heard it from the founders, but Green and Black chocolate, which I think were one of the kind of sustainable organic chocolate brands.
I think you're right.
They actually got purchased by Cadbury's, which you kind of think might be an interesting. But Cadbury's, which I believe is owned by Kraft, the US bigger food company. The main reason was they actually were struggling to bring that kind of sense of sustainability and organic into their brand. And that was the reason for the acquisition. So you might sit there thinking, okay, is this the right kind of purchaser of my business? Is it going to leave the right kind of legacy? But I think some of these bigger companies will find it easier to adopt what more nimble, earlier stage companies, smaller companies are doing, because they know they need to do that. And sometimes they need to demonstrate that through either doing it themselves or attracting themselves to brands that are doing it well and saying, this is what we want to bring into our ethos. And I think anyone running a business who's got on their mind some kind of succession and exit plan, this is a good thing. If you've got a very strong purpose and a long-term vision, which you don't have to complete, right? As long as you're setting a business in that direction, then it's only going to add to the interest you might get from potential acquirers and
Yeah.
and improve the overall ability to make create wealth from that business. Which ultimately all the things that we try and advise companies on is growing businesses, making profit, making sure you've got good profit and cash flow, sustainable business to take forward, and eventually either sell that or potentially do some kind of transfer of ownership to your employees,
Yes.
whatever's the best fit. So I think it's all linked, everything we've just been talking about. For people listening to this, or people that think, right, have I got my message right? Do I have people engaged behind it? What would you say are the kind of first couple of things to do? And you've obviously you've been attached for a lot of your career with a particular brand in the hi-fi space, and I think they've done that well, and it regularly comes up in conversation, that particular brand and things they've done. You could talk about that if you want, or what would you say is a particular process to run through if you're going to try and attack this kind of purpose people profit agenda?
So I think there's a great link between purpose-driven businesses and a broader stakeholder capitalism. So really what it's about is engaging all of the people who take interest in your business and making sure that they've got really it starts with a conversation. So it's about talking to the employees or the colleagues within the business, finding out what motivates them, what they think the business is about. If this doesn't already have clear definition, speaking to them is tremendously important. The ownership of the business is also, of course, something that's important. And the customer base too would be three particular groups that I would say were of tremendous importance. And taking in those views and working out where the business fits within the larger society, the larger world, is probably the way to go about it in the first instance. Those conversations will bring guidance, and you've just got to drill down or peel away the layers and, okay, what is it we do and why do we do this? What's our why? It's the Simon Sinek kind of thing. The why, the how, and the what.
Yeah.
So the why is the core of it all, the reason for the business's existence, and just really nailing that down. So you mentioned the brand that I used to work for before in without naming them. So it was Cambridge Audio, of course, and theirs is made by music. Everything that business does is driven by a love of music, and it's channeled through that lens of what music's all about. So I think most businesses would probably have a capability of doing that and recognizing the thing that they're all about and what makes them different, principally. And because in most instances, this purpose will be relatively unique, but the values and the culture and the other aspects which come along with it are probably likely to be quite similar in different businesses, but the purpose will be one and only in all instances. But it's about talking to people, and you might have all of the ideas yourself, get them down on paper, and then again, talk to people and double check it and see whether that's what other people think too.
And I think that just that simple approach, get people talking about it, I think is a really exciting part of a business's journey to actually open up to the fact that we want to look at this, because we might already have this in place, but we want to just make sure we've got this right. We'll think, have we got, is there an opportunity to tweak this or improve it? Or this is something that we feel we haven't addressed and we want to. The next part of the journey of this business, this is cool. We want to really understand and get nailed what we're here for, what we're trying to achieve. And the stakeholders internally and external are a key part of that. And I think most people in the business get quite excited about that, provided it's done in a way that kind of is fit for purpose. And by that, I mean, you engage the right people and don't kind of go down routes that are going to be disruptive for doing the day job, actually keeping a business going day to day, but also making sure you act on it as well. I think a lot of companies talk about all this stuff, but then never actually execute anything. And I think that's the key. You can get a lot of people frustrated by saying, we're getting all these brilliant things, and then nothing really comes of it. And I think it's just setting a realistic approach to, this is what we want to do and we want to talk about, and then a realistic time frame and steps to actually make progress.
That's right.
Yeah. Is that
absolutely?
Would you add
authenticity is absolutely key to this.
Yeah.
So it being real is absolutely vital, because if it's inauthentic, it will be found out. Yeah. And when it's found out, that will have a negative impact. That will cause the employees to be disappointed or unmotivated. That will cause the customers to be disappointed, which will similarly be detrimental to the business. So if you're going to do it, you've got to do it for real.
And I think with it, it's not something that has to be done overnight, right? It's a
Not at all.
transformation and a bit of a mindset shift for many people, but also having that open dialogue internally and externally with your key stakeholders, your customers, your suppliers, anyone else that's involved externally with the business, just helps demonstrate that message and articulate it and get that message out there, which, you know, if you get it right and you're hitting the right notes for your business to be really passionate about what you're doing and share that, you're only going to build better reputation for your business, for your brand, and generate more opportunities. We're running out of time, so I'm just thinking there's a big topic here, and as you say, the first thing is have a conversation. I think my advice often to companies is, if you don't know where to start, think about getting someone external to come in and help you start these conversations, because I think positioning it with your team is a big thing to get right, to make sure you're positioning it as a positive thing, something that you want people to get engaged with, something that's going to help attract and retain people to your business, as well as all the other things, including having a profitable, growing business as well. What would be your top tip for anyone listening to this, other than have a chat with you and get some ideas? What would be your top?
Well, I think it would be exactly that. It would be sit down with some of your team, all of your team, whoever's motivated at this moment in time to engage in the conversation and get that conversation started, and look up, you know, investigate the subject a little bit further. There's lots of information available, but yes, definitely we can have conversations with people and help them. But really, it's about understanding what people who know the brand and have a slightly different perspective to your own think, and bringing that in and processing that thought. You're absolutely right. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It's a journey. But again, it's back to that long-term thinking. It's about doing the right thing over the longer term to deliver the best outcomes for the business as a consequence of doing well by other people.
No, 100%. And actually, funny enough, what you just said there, I think having someone else external listen to what you're talking about is a great way to understand, have you got this right? Because I think then companies overcomplicate things internally, or management have a complex way of trying to explain what they're trying to do, which is difficult to get everyone behind. And I think having a sounding board that's not involved with the day-to-day, the history of a business, is a great way to just make sure you've got the tone and the language right, that it actually makes sense to anyone that's listening to it for the first time. So I think great tips. Look, Stuart, I've enjoyed talking about this, and I'm sure there's more we can talk about. But thanks for this, and hopefully a useful bit of food for thought for people. So thanks, Stuart.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like more information about the topics discussed in this podcast, then you can find us on our website at moveyourbusinessforward.com.